Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into a monumental shift in human history, pulling directly from Dr. Abdul Azam Anis's fascinating book, Science and Civilization. We're going to take a really close look at the profound transition from ancient, isolated thinkers to the highly structured golden age of Hellenistic science. If you've ever wondered how modern scientific inquiry actually got its start, like how we moved from scattered philosophy to rigorous mathematical truth, well, it started with a massive spark during this incredible era. So, let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we've got the Alexandria shift. Second, Euclid and organizing geometry. Third, Archimedes, mechanics and volume. Fourth, Eratosthenes measuring the Earth. And finally, number 5, Galen's Hellenistic medicine.
All right, Section 1, the Alexandria shift, the first state-funded research.
So the really big takeaway here is the night and day difference between these two distinct eras. In the ancient past, you had these isolated philosophers who were brilliant individuals for sure, but they had to rely entirely on their own personal wealth. Or they'd have to beg for sporadic temple patronage just to survive, let alone actually get any research done. I mean, imagine trying to unravel the mysteries of the universe when you're stressed about basic sustenance and funding. But the Alexandria era? That changed the game entirely. For the very first time in human history, we see the establishment of state-funded research through the Museum and Library of Alexandria, all thanks to the Ptolemaic dynasty. Scientists were brought together, given vast resources, and allowed to just focus completely on organized, collaborative study without worrying about where their next meal was coming from. This unprecedented socioeconomic luxury created this amazing collaborative incubator that led to over 200 years of absolutely unparalleled scientific advancement.
Moving on to Section 2, Euclid organizing geometry, the systematization of math.
Euclid operated right out of that Alexandria hub and took on what was arguably the most monumental task in the history of mathematics. He didn't just invent geometry out of thin air. Actually, it's more like he took all these existing scattered mathematical puzzle pieces and organized them into an absolute masterpiece called the Elements. He structured it perfectly. He started with clear definitions, right? Then he moved to foundational postulates. He laid out undeniable axioms. And finally, he built up rigorous, step-by-step logical proofs. It was a massive leap from abstract guesswork to absolute, deducible truth. Just think about how incredible that is. In fact, this precise logical flow is so flawless that it's literally still the foundation of how mathematics is taught in schools around the entire world today.
Okay, Section 3, Archimedes, mechanics and volume, bridging geometry and the physical world.
Now, Archimedes of Syracuse eventually returned to his home in Sicily, but he kept very close, lifelong ties with the scientific community over in Alexandria. He was an absolute genius who brilliantly took the abstract math pioneered by thinkers like Euclid and applied it to real-world physical problems. Imagine you're Archimedes for a second, and King Hero hands you this tricky, potentially dangerous problem. How do you prove a newly made crown is pure gold? Like, what if a cheating goldsmith secretly mixed in cheaper silver? And the catch, you have to figure this out without melting down or damaging the beautiful crown itself. This is practical, high-stakes physics we're talking about.
Well, the solution famously hit him during what is now his eureka moment in the bathtub. He noticed that as he got into the bath, the water level rose, and it clicked. He realized that a given weight of gold, because it's denser, takes up less volume than the exact same weight of silver. So by comparing the water displaced by equal weights of pure gold and pure silver, and then submerging the crown itself, he could check the exact displacement. And guess what? The displacement of water perfectly proved the goldsmith had indeed fraudulently mixed silver into the crown. He bridged theoretical mechanics and practical engineering in a way nobody had ever seen before. Though thankfully, modern science doesn't require us to run naked through the street shouting Eureka to prove a valid point today.
Now, what's really interesting about this is that behind those popular legends of bathtubs and crowns, Archimedes was actually doing incredibly hard, complex mathematics. He used what we call the method of exhaustion. By breaking down curved shapes into a seemingly infinite number of tiny, measurable, straight-edged pieces, he was able to calculate areas and volumes with breathtaking precision. Through this sheer force of logic, he was effectively laying down the very foundations of integral calculus, literally thousands of years before historical giants like Newton and Leibniz even came onto the scene. And this brilliantly illustrates what he considered his absolute proudest mathematical achievement. Using that same rigorous logic, he proved that the volume of a sphere is exactly 2/3 that of its enclosing cylinder. He was so incredibly proud of this exact geometric ratio that he actually requested it be engraved on his tombstone. It's just a perfect, enduring example of mathematical beauty, precision, and the totally boundless ambition of the Hellenistic era.
All right, Section 4, Eratosthenes, Measuring the Earth, the Birth of Scientific Geography.
From the microscopic precision of mathematical proofs, let's zoom all the way out. We're moving over to Eratosthenes, a director at the Alexandria Museum, who tackled what must have seemed like a completely impossible task at the time, measuring our entire planet. 24,700. Just let that number sink in for a second. Using absolutely nothing but the angles of shadows cast by the sun in two different cities, applied geometry, and reports from travelers, Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference to be 24,700 miles. Think about that. No satellites, no GPS, no modern surveying instruments at all, and his calculation was astoundingly close, just about 250 miles off from our modern high-tech measurements. It really was the true birth of scientific geography, linking mathematical astronomy directly to the physical mapping of our earthly environment.
And finally, Section 5, Galen, Hellenistic Medicine, a Legacy of Anatomy and Physiology. Shifting gears from the physical sciences over to the biological, let's look at Galen. While he operated a bit later on, his work is deeply, deeply rooted in this Hellenistic tradition. Galen represents the zenith of ancient medicine, basically absorbing the vast medical knowledge compiled in Alexandria and bridging it seamlessly right into the Roman Empire. Tracing his legacy, he was born around 130 AD in Pergamum. By 200 AD, he was highly successful, practicing in Rome and solidifying theories that heavily relied on concepts like the three spirits, where the liver, heart, and brain managed different vital forces of the body. Because human dissection was heavily restricted back then, he derived massive amounts of anatomical data from animal dissection instead. And what's truly surprising here is that his resulting medical doctrines were so comprehensive and persuasive that these animal-based anatomical assumptions became the absolute unquestioned authority in global human medicine for nearly 2 millennia. I mean, his work wasn't truly challenged until the Renaissance and into the 17th century.
So, what does this all mean for us? We've traveled from the state-funded halls of Alexandria to the mathematical genius of Euclid and Archimedes, the staggering geographic calculations of Eratosthenes, and those enduring medical doctrines of Galen. We've seen exactly how state-backed curiosity transformed abstract thought into deducible truth and practical engineering. Which brings us to a final thought. The next time you use a GPS, or take some medicine, or even just study basic geometry, ask yourself, what other everyday modern truths are secretly hiding in the dust of antiquity? Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.